about. Right before those angels showed up and interrupted their quiet night. They were standing at their posts, watching the sheep, watching the horizon, and they're thinking to themselves, what are they thinking? What do people think about when they're left to themselves too much? Maybe some of them were enjoying the starry night. Maybe. Maybe they saw that scene every single night and were unimpressed. Maybe they noticed a new star. Maybe they were thinking about their homes and families. Maybe they were thinking that they should have stayed in school. Shepherding was a crucial job in their economy, but it was not a glorious one. Nobody was ever like, oh, wow, you watch over someone else's sheep all night. How great for you. Except maybe a toddler. Because toddlers, my toddler at least, would have thought that was super cool. And weavers. Jim Page and I would think that was pretty cool, probably. It wasn't a cool job to most people. And I wonder if night after night, standing out there watching the sheep, watching the horizon, watching the sky, if they didn't wonder why they were there and where their lives had gone wrong. There is a pastor in our conference, retired now. Some of you may have heard of her or met her, Reverend Lynn Dyke. She was pastor here 15, 16 years ago, and later my district superintendent, as well as this church's district superintendent. She came as a DS to visit the church I was serving, asked a bunch of questions, and then said, wow, you are so bored. You should probably find something to do along with church work that keeps your mind busy. I looked into doing some teaching, but I couldn't find the right gig. What I did find was a set of retirement facilities owned by an acquaintance that needed a chaplain who could handle memory care work. There is a gift for this kind of work, and I don't have much of it. Experience, yes. Gift, no. If you've had a friend, a colleague, or a loved one slip into a debilitating case of dementia or Alzheimer's, you know how difficult it can be. So I would go in about half an hour on a couple of different weekdays. And when I'd go, the staff would immediately take their break because for a little while there was somebody else to keep the active residents entertained and safe. So sometimes we'd gather and sing songs. Sometimes we would listen to disco and dance. Sometimes I'd tell them funny stories. Sometimes I'd just sit with a few individuals for a while and have private conversations. It really depended on the mood of the place and the mood of the residents. The staff worked hard to keep them active and entertained. But when they were left alone, when they had time on their hands, some of them would do this thing I call slipping down the rabbit hole. They'd start to wonder where they were, what kind of place this was that they were in. They'd worry about who was paying for it, and if it was expensive, and if they had any money left. They'd wonder why they were there and not home, and what happened to their home, who's living in their home, and why did their spouse or children or grandchildren or siblings put them there. If you've ever loved someone with dementia, this thought pattern may be very familiar to you. And as they'd slip down their rabbit hole, their thoughts would turn darker. I'd get questions sometimes like, did my husband put me here so he could move another woman in? Did my child put me here so they could live in my home rent-free? Why don't I have any money in my wallet? Why don't they come and see me? In the rabbit hole, I would hear a lot of things like, I didn't raise them to be like this. It was so painful, but very, very normal thought process. They'd feel unloved and forgotten, even if their kids had been there 20 minutes ago, because they couldn't remember the visit. And it would be the same people over and over again. You'd walk in and you'd see, oh, she's down the rabbit hole. Slipping down their own version, worrying about the things their life had trained them to be worried about. Because our anxieties are buried so deep in us that we cannot forget them. I wasn't there enough to have the answers to their questions, and I knew I wasn't going to lie to them, and I knew not to argue. So all I could do was redirect and try to get their energy focused on the moment we were in right now together. It was hard work. One week I found my easiest resident sitting by herself in her usual spot, looking confused and glum, which wasn't normal for her. She was really active, bright and rational and self-confident. She was funny and pleasant. We had great times together. She used to sing in a church choir. So all I had to do was start singing a hymn to get a perfect alto part out of her. She didn't always remember the words, but she could hum the alto part of her tune. These church choir memories were so much a part of her that even the dementia couldn't take them. The tunes were buried so deep she could not forget them. I once asked her if she knew the hymn I was playing, and she replied archly, "Well, I certainly don't know him, but I believe I might know her." She had such excellent social skills. It was easy to forget that she would forget everything we had talked about in about 2 minutes. She was the first patient to remember me. She wouldn't say hi, Kim, but she'd go, "Ooh, you." And she knew I was safe to talk to, even if she didn't remember who I was or what I was doing there. Sometimes she would grab me and ask me, "Now, who do you belong to?" And I would tell her that I belonged to her. And she would smile and whisper, "I knew you were here for me." But on this visit, I watched her slip down the rabbit hole. It was a shock. It was Christmas time, and I was there to sing Christmas songs, and she was in a dark place. She started with, "You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about where they get that food that they take into that kitchen and cook for us. Who pays for the food that they take into that kitchen, and who pays them to cook for us? I mean, how do I live here? This isn't my home. It's really nice. Look at the Christmas decorations. I don't decorate my home like this. I don't know why I keep waking up here." And I tried to distract her. "Oh, let's go look at the pretty ornaments on the tree." But she would not have it. She said, "Look, I think about this stuff all the time when I'm alone. And I've never said it to anyone. But as I've been talking to you, I feel everything in here gets softer. So I need to keep talking, okay? I need to keep talking." And I said, "Better out than in." And out it came. All of her private thoughts and darkest fears came up as she slipped down the rabbit hole, and hers was a little different from others because she had not lost total faith in her loved ones. But it was just as dark and scary. She felt unloved, alone, forgotten, abandoned. By the time she was done, we both had tears just running down our faces. So people do that. People with dementia do it, and people without dementia do it. They get too much time alone on a hillside. One question leads to another, to another, to another. And they beat themselves up and those they love with the what ifs and the should haves. What were the shepherds on the hillside doing that night? They were being people. People harbor dark feelings about themselves and their choices, their issues, and their failures. They start thinking that the way people treat them says something about them. And they go from "I feel unloved" to "I must be unlovable." They feel unimportant and forgotten. Lots of folks do this. Lots of folks in our lives do this. So I'm sitting with this woman I've come to love in the dark together at the bottom of her rabbit hole. And I asked her if she would like to know the truth, even if it was really hard to hear. She said yes. So I went and got some staff. Because of HIPAA, they couldn't tell me much that I didn't witness. But I said, I don't want you to answer my questions. I want you to answer her questions. They were very surprised when I named the resident because they'd never seen her go down the rabbit hole. And I assured them that that I had become her pastor and that I felt it was in her best interest for someone to just be very honest and straightforward with her in this moment. No games, no distractions, just tell her the truth. So they gathered around her and I sat with her holding her hand. I asked her questions to them and they told her the answers. Her family came every week. They came every week. They drove hours and hours to visit her every week. They told her what her kids did with her and what they brought for her when they came. She denied this. She didn't believe them. So they went in her room and they brought out the things that her daughters had brought just a few days before. They described her children to her, not just their faces, but their personalities. And she began to cry. But why don't they come see me? I understand they come here and bring me things, but why don't they ever come in my room? And they described the children's very last visit to her, which involved a Chiefs football game on a Sunday afternoon, and something in that clicked. It hit a chord with her. And she grabbed her skull and proclaimed in joy, "It's all in here. I have a problem in my head, and that's why I don't know the truth anymore." I thought it was the most terrible realization in the world. And she was full of joy. Absolute, unfiltered joy. She was home to herself. She was home to reality. She was home to love. She was loved. She was not forgotten. She was not forsaken. She was not abandoned. She was loved. She was home after years of wandering. She was joyful to be home. She was home even though she wasn't in her home. The more important home was realizing in an undeniable way that she was so loved. The people of the world had forgotten they were loved. God's message to them had always been love, but other people had applied it in funny ways, and it became less about the love and more about the should and the should not. Few people measured up, certainly not shepherds. Hypocrisy ran rampant. And these shepherds, these lowly shepherds on a hillside, people who spent far too much time alone, people who hadn't really made it in life, they got the message first. You are not forgotten. You are not unloved. You get to see the good news first. It is happening now. You cannot deny it. The proof is lying in a manger. You are loved. The angels told them this to bring all people joy. That joy of realizing you are remembered. The joy of remembering that you are loved. The joy of realizing that it's all been just a problem in your head. And that's why you don't know it anymore. Joy. He wants us to come home with joy. He wants us to come home to joy. We're loved by God. The people of this world have forgotten they are loved. God's message to them is love, but other people have applied it in funny ways, and it's become more about the shoulds and the should nots than love. Few measure up. Hypocrisy runs rampant. Go, shepherds! Go to Bethlehem and see. This Christmas, get it. You're loved. Down deep, down so deep that you will never forget it. Feel that undeniable love of God. The proof will be lying in a manger. God remembers you, and you are loved. Amen.